Well, the biggest and easiest answer is North Dakota Studies. It's you know, ndstudies.gov. It's the State Historical Society's curriculum built for 4th grade and 8th grade. And the legislature's mandate is to teach it in 4th grade, 8th grade, and offer it every other year in high school. Well, the high school text is out of date, and we're in the process of beginning to think about that, so we'll set that aside for right now. But the 4th grade and 8th grade have been completely revised and are electronic and completely searchable. Full lessons, full access, so ndstudies.gov, people living on the land is what the 8th grade one is. You click on it, there are 4 units. The 4 units are designed in a way to think like a historian. A historian thinks about economics, thinks about community, thinks about conflict, thinks about expressions. That's the same themes as our gallery spaces. And it's the same themes as in the Native Gallery here too, only they're not called out that way. So if you were in your North Dakota Studies textbook online with your students, you can begin to understand the access points, okay? The objects that are in the images are from the galleries or from our collections. Another resource that the teachers have access to are called SEND trunks, suitcase exhibits in North Dakota. And we may rebrand that someday, but they're available on the North Dakota Studies website, teacher resources, SEND, and there are these different trunks. And they're a 2 by 2 by 2 foot trunk with foam rubber layers of objects, a book of lesson plans, and a bunch of primary source photographs or documents from the archives. So you've got 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional objects and lesson connection in a box related to Mandan, Hidatsa, and Sanish, or Dakota, or Chippewa and Métis, or pioneer women, any of a whole bunch of different topics. Those can be checked out from the Historical Society on a 2-week or longer flexible basis, depending upon how long it's needed. We ship them, or they can pick them up. They cost $25 for the 2 weeks. If they pick them up, they cost $100 for us to ship them. So they're not cheap. We encourage multiple classrooms to go together, or small towns even. We've got lots of places where 3 little towns get the Mandan trunk, and it's out there for a month and a half, and that's cool, and it moves around out there, and it costs them the $100, and they ship it back at the end. And they're there for the teachers. It's a resource. It's not us making money on the deal. But the idea is to put objects in teachers' hands that are related to the things that they're teaching. So that engages them in that curriculum space. The other thing that we're working on is in each of our galleries, there is what is called a learning lab. And that learning lab space is designed for educators to take over and use when they're in our gallery. The way I think of a laboratory is a lab person, a scientist, thinks about something, and then they go out in the field and does some research, and then they come back in and write up or inform or build they look at their theory, they say this didn't work, okay, you with me so far? So if you think about a learning lab that way, a teacher can build the idea that you're going to go do research on Native people in the Native Peoples Gallery, and we'll set it up in the learning lab with, this is the worksheet that you guys are going to fill out, and you come in, teacher comes in, accesses the computer, puts it up on a smart board in the space, in the gallery, sends their students out into the field, which is the gallery, to investigate and come back and engage with the rest of their peers in their research effort in the lab. And that can be brought back to the classroom, sent to the principal. The outcome can be, here's what we did, so this justifies the bus coming, I see lots of ways, and that's very underutilized. When the galleries were built, I knew that we needed to have an educational space that teachers could use, and they hadn't thought of any classrooms or anything in the expansion. And I got here later in the planning than I could have much change. And so these learning labs are a nod to that importance. The agency recognizes that this is a huge piece of where we need to go, and this is part of what we're trying to do. So I've got a person that's hired to work on how do we know on the smart boards in the learning lab, so you as a teacher could come up and you would see an archaeology field notebook that's created for students. They can go up and interactively investigate and learn what an archaeologist thinks about this archaeological site, so that when they go out into the gallery and understand what they're seeing, it makes sense and tells that story. Like you were asking me earlier, is how do you get from an archaeological site to the real deal? Well, as an interpreter, the thing that always happened to me was people would come up to me with a piece of rock and say, "What is this?" And I would say, "Let's investigate it." Now, where would it come from? Well, I know that it came out of a quarry out there, so I'm giving them an answer. And I'd say, why would somebody walk 150 miles to go get this kind of rock? Remember we talked about the rock is predictably break? You heard that someplace else? What do you think this is? It's a tool. That's what it is. Or it's the leftovers from a tool that isn't there. And that's what the archaeologists are looking at. They're looking at the junk. They're looking at stuff that didn't go in the guy's pocket or go on the arrow. They're looking at the stuff that's left behind. But if you break off a piece of rock to reveal the arrowhead, all of those flakes tell a story too. And that's what archaeology is about. So you can't have somebody go out and just muck around on an archaeological site because it's gone for forever, because every flake and where it is on the site is important. And so when an archaeologist is working in the field, what they are doing is documenting the stuff without the dirt in between it. Make sense? I mean, so here's this bead, and it's sitting here, and there's another one next to it, another one next to it, and then those three are red, and then there's two blue ones, and then oh, it's a box. It's a geometric pattern. Maybe this is a Lakota. We just found out a whole bunch just by looking at what was in the ground with the dirt gone. But you don't do that until you get back to the lab. So all of that needs to be recorded in such minute detail that it takes huge amounts of time. So it's very expensive. So we don't do a lot of archaeology anymore. It's not being done the way it was in the 1960s, 70s. It's being done on a very specific, guided way, and the way that it's being guided is through remote sensing and electronic things, so we can look through the dirt and see that there's a disturbance down there and go, I wonder what that is. And when you open it up, it's a storage pit full of corn that in the 1970s, when I was doing archaeology, I'd scrape the dirt away until I got down to that cache pit and opened it up, and it's full of corn. But we could predict it today and know that that's the place to work because there's information there that can help us, and we don't have to open this huge space. So